We are live on BYUtvSports.com, and we are very grateful to have the global voice of the BYU Cougars on KSL 1160 AM radio. Greg Wrubell with us. Thanks for taking some time with us to discuss.
My pleasure.
Cougar football in 2013. I think my first question is probably an obvious one, and one that I think that you could probably answer. But comparing all the seasons that you've done as a broadcaster, what's going to make 2013 unique for you and for this Cougar football team?
I think the caliber of the schedule. I think you can look and say that, empirically, this is, the toughest schedule BYU's faced. And so, that in and of itself, really kind of, gets the competitive juices flowing in terms of what could be possible with this year. It's often been said that you can't have the special season without the special schedule. And BYU's got that this year. It's the kind of schedule that it's good enough, and you never want to forecast a loss anywhere in these games, but it's a good enough schedule that with a single setback, I think it's a BCS caliber schedule. Now, you'd have to hope that no one else out there rips off a 12-0 season, but I think it's good enough to be a one-loss BCS caliber campaign. And again, you never want to forecast a setback anywhere there, but it's that good. And so, could possibly, Bronco talks about those 10 and 11 win seasons being his expectation. Well, if you get into the 10 or 11 win category with this schedule, you've got a great team and you've had a great year. And so, that's one element. I think another is the fact that it's an entirely new offensive staff, but yet there's that element of familiarity with Robert and I. There's an established philosophy and standard set. So that in a lot of ways, even though the coaches are new, you can kind of hit the ground running. There's familiarity between coaches and players, and really philosophy and players as well. So those things, I think, are the most intriguing elements of the 2013 campaign.
You talk about the offense, this new go fast, go hard system, and immediately Oregon comes to mind. But are we going to see the type of production that Oregon puts out from this BYU squad? Do you feel like the potential is there?
Well, one can only hope, and certainly a lot of it depends, and like Bronco said, it depends on the players. You've got to have the players. Now, I do know that in spring they resorted to some Oregon-style tactics with flashcards on the sideline, the big poster cards. So there's an element of that involved, and there's different ways to communicate, of course, to your players.
I'll probably get your face up on one of those, by the way.
One could wish, wouldn't that be something? Career highlight. But and they're not the only school doing it. BYU might be one of those that now joins the mix of finding that unique way to communicate with the players. The tempo will be interesting to watch. I know that Robert has some very ambitious goals for number of plays per game. I'm not sure that BYU has to be running 90 plays a game to be effective. In fact, if you go back and look at Robert and I's first 6 seasons at BYU as offensive coordinator, his most successful and efficient and productive seasons were those where the average number of plays run was, I guess you'd say average, in the 60 to 70, sure. 65 to 75 range, 65 to 70, nothing too exorbitant, but just very effective, very impactful. And I know that Robert wants to combine that kind of impact with the hard and fast, with the maybe 80 to 90 plays a game. Those would be special games indeed, but it would be tough to expect that to be an every game occurrence. It's just too hard to do. But that's ambitious, and it's a good goal to have. And if they start rolling like that, BYU should have a good offense.
Robert has some weapons to work with, Cody Hoffman, but there's a lot of talk about the guys that are going to get him the ball and be able to spread the ball around. Taysom Hill, Ammon Olsen, you've watched both of them closely. What do you think about the quarterback situation entering fall camp?
Bronco today termed Taysom Hill to be, at least he said he'd be about 95%. I think everyone wants to see if Taysom can get back to the player he was last year. It's so unfortunate, the injury he suffered, because we saw in the Hawaii game in particular, when he busted off that 68-yard touchdown run, the kind of explosiveness that he presents a defense, to deal with, and well, there's the run right there. I mean, you don't see too many quarterbacks, skipping and then running away from defensive backs, but that was Taysom Hill last year. You hope he gets that back. That's the biggest concern, is with the rehab and everything else, does he lose anything? Does he still have that burst and that explosion and that speed, because he's such a special athlete? What attracts you to Taysom Hill is not the fact that he's a 65 to 70% passer and just a dead-eye thrower. It's the whole package with him.
Yeah.
And you hope that the lower part of the body package is there, that he's able to bring that running ability back. Now, they're not going to run him on as many quarterback draws as we've seen maybe in years past, but it's still going to be an element of the offense. You hope it's there to where you can bust into the defense, into the secondary, and make a run like he did last year. And so that's the biggest hope, is that he gets back to be 100%. And then you want to see him as a thrower improve as a passer of the ball. Get that completion percentage up a little higher and be more accurate. But then again, we were talking about a freshman backup in only 6 games last year and very spot duty. So did have 2 starts, but he was a backup until that point. You just want to see him stay healthy for a whole season and do what others have done in similar positions.
He's a true dual threat quarterback, and I don't know, maybe you can chime in on this. Was Steve Young really the last person that we saw that kind of has a Taysom Hill quality to his game?
When John Beck first got here, they liked the fact that he was mobile, and they ran him a lot more earlier in his career than later in his career. What happened later in his career? Well, Robert and I came in, and you saw that he and Bronco really focused with both John Beck and then Max Hall, who wasn't the same running threat at all. With both quarterbacks, it was imperative that they stay healthy, that they minimize the risk. So in Robert's first go-round, it was a very risk-averse offense relative to the quarterback. In the last couple of years under Brandon Doman, it was a little more risk-heavy offense for the quarterback. And you saw that you take the risk, and sometimes it doesn't pay off. And we saw how injuries played, had a great impact in the last couple of seasons relative to Riley Nelson. So Robert and I's challenge is going to be protect the quarterback, yet still utilize a weapon that has to be considered something for the defense to account for. You don't want to waste Taysom Hill's skills. By the same token, you don't want to expose him to the same kind of consistent risk that ultimately did Riley Nelson. Let's not forget that last year, Riley Nelson opened the season by playing Washington State. That was a healthy game for him. He had a great game. I mean, if you'd gotten 12 of those kinds of games from Riley Nelson, who's to say how the season would have turned out last year? But he breaks his back in game 2, and he continues to play through that, and you see what the effect was. One can only wonder what a healthy quarterback would have done all season. But I do know that he wasn't at his best from the first game on. And you can hope again that someone like Taysom Hill stays healthy, or should, heaven forbid, someone else have to come in, that they can be exposed to as few risks as possible, so that you can get that consistency. What stood out about the Robert and I tenure first time around was in his first 5 seasons, really John Beck and Max Hall took pretty much every meaningful snap. They weren't having to rotate guys in. And in Robert's last year, it was a designed platoon between Heaps and Nelson, and then you're throwing in Jake as a freshman. And then these last couple of years of Brandon Doman, you're looking at rotations again, either by performance or by injury, and it's tough. I mean, that consistency at quarterback in those first 5 years of the first and I go-round meant everything to BYU. Long answer to your short question.
That was a great answer. That's why you're here. Obviously, he's got some weapons that he can hand the ball off to, does Taysom, speaking of Jamal Williams. And I'm sure the Cougar coaching staff is hoping that Jamal can carry some of the load and take some of that pressure off Taysom. Talk about Jamal's game and how that has evolved as such a young player. I mean, over 1,100 total yards as a 17-year-old. It's unheard of.
Another hallmark of Robert and I's tenure in his first stint as offensive coordinator was a workhorse running back, a go-to running back. It was Curtis Brown, then it was Harvey Unit. Okay, they got the majority of the carries, and they were 1,000-yard rushers. We haven't seen either the consistency in workload or the 1,000-yard production in the last 3 seasons. I think it can return this year if Robert treats Jamal like he did Curtis and like he did Harvey before him. That is, he's my main back, he's going to get most of the carries, and he's good enough to be a 1,000-yard rusher. You don't totally ignore Michael Elisa or others in the backfield, but I think you almost look at Jamal and say, yeah, he's the guy. And he's good enough to be that guy. And then you use others, in as versatile and productive a way as you can. But I assuming his body can withstand it and he's up to the task, I want to see him carry the ball a lot in 2013.
Stay healthy, go fast, go hard. Those are the keys for the Cougars to see. A last question for you. You're a man that has visited just about every college football stadium in the country.
Not as many as I'd like, but some of the good ones, yeah.
Is there one on the schedule this year that you have not visited that you're looking forward to?
Let's see here. I got to think quickly through my head. Well, BYU is going to play in an NFL stadium down in Houston.
Reliance Stadium.
Reliance Stadium. That'll be new for me. Of course, going to Notre Dame is always a thrill. Done it many times, but it's a thrill every time. Virginia, beautiful, beautiful stadium there in Charlottesville, but I've done that one as well. So of the road games, let's see. We crossed off Virginia.
Have you been to Camp Randall?
Never been to Camp Randall, so that'll be the other big one this year. Logan been to many times, of course, and been to Nevada. But yeah, Wisconsin and Houston, I guess, highlight this year in terms of novelty. One of the great things about independence is you do have that novelty.
Yeah.
From year to year, you can go so many different places. And it will be Camp Randall this year. That's one that Paul James always talked about. My predecessor in this job did it for 35 years. He's been to all the great stadiums, and he still talks about the last time BYU played at Wisconsin and how the entire building kind of rocked with the stands and how he felt that vibration and how impressive an atmosphere it was for him. So I look forward to Camp Randall, which has great history in and of itself, by the way, as a venue. And then playing in NFL buildings is always kind of cool, and Reliance, a neat venue, and just structure. So we look forward to that. But that's the great thing about this job. Even the home games. You know, I sit in the press box at Wrubell Everett Stadium, and I go, there aren't too many better gigs than to come and see this site
Such a great scene.
on a weekly basis. And so I'm really blessed. And, well, there's a good view right there from where we're sitting. Blessed to do what I do, whether at home or on the road, and just so excited about the 2013 season.
Very good. The voice of the Cougars, Greg Wrubell, thanks so much for your time and insight.